the tools to build those brands and to build those services are so different today than they were when I first started investing 25 years ago.
There's a ton of opportunity for efficiencies and for really strong ROI to justify paying these software prices.
We at VMG have been doing over the past 20 years is giving them the capital, the operational expertise to guide them through that journey.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Mike, Carl, thank you. Mike, why don't you start with a brief introduction? Just tell us about VMG, your strategy, and your approach.
Sure. So if you were to talk to our largest investors like Timco and Harvard and Northwestern, they would say we're a growth investment firm that focuses on consumer products, both the brands and the technologies in the area. But I like to describe it a little bit different. Think about the shopping cart that you were using 25 years ago and the brands that you put in there. Think about the consumer services that you used to go to for your beauty regimen, for your fitness regimen, for your nutrition regimen. And think about what you put in that cart today and where you go today and how different that is, how those brands are different, how those experiences are different, how that gym is different than you went before. All those brands and all those consumer services that were started by entrepreneurs. And what we at VMG have been doing over the past 20 years is giving them the capital, the operational expertise to guide them through that journey. In addition, we also have started over the past 6 years an effort to work with the technologies that are driving that consumer space, because the tools to build those brands and to build those services are so different today than they were when I first started investing 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's incredibly helpful. So that's actually a fantastic segue into our next question. Carl, spend some time talking about the intersection between the consumer half of your business and the technology half of your business. How does having both of those under the same roof enhance your ability to due diligence, to come up with new investment strategies, or anything around your process? And do those help each other?
Sure. So a little bit of background on myself. So I joined VMG 12 years ago when we were exclusively focused on consumer brands and consumer services, and really witnessed firsthand through our ethos, which is about an ecosystem-driven approach and very value-add investors, that for the first time, all of our consumer portfolio companies were asking us about technology. I mean, this was when all of a sudden Shopify was getting a lot of growth. Social media was starting to accelerate. And so, the tech stack really started to evolve from what was really an ERP system to now a heavily involved system of MarTech, supply chain technology, vertical SaaS into these areas. And so what Mike and I realized was, for us to continue to be a best-in-class consumer investor, we would have to coach this ecosystem on the types of technologies they should be adapting. Really, again, all about how do we leverage this network that we've developed over the past 20 years to get information asymmetry to lead to better decisions. Then how do we also use that ecosystem to provide an unfair advantage to the companies we invest in? And that's with close collaboration of the consumer team, because it really manifests itself in these thought leadership partnerships with an ABI or a Foot Locker or Michaels, where we've recently hosted what we call executive briefing centers or tech roadmap days with them to kind of understand what are the pain points they're facing, what are their business priorities, and how do we help them find the technology to address it. With that, we are differentiating ourselves in the eyes of the founders because we're providing them with key customer introductions. But that's also helping us with the diligence because we're getting amazing feedback from some of these big enterprise customers or our mid-market brands within our consumer portfolio of what type of impact this technology is actually having on those companies. What is the likelihood to move from a pilot to commercialization? And thus, should we be making an investment? What's the willingness to pay, and how much should we be paying for that particular asset?
So said otherwise, it sounds like every single wildly successful consumer entrepreneur is not already a tech expert when they build their company. Is that right? Is that what I mean?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
We are seeing the adoption curve within the consumer ecosystem accelerating quite rapidly.
Outstanding. Mike, the theme that we talk about at CAS is the changing consumer. So let's spend some time focusing on how the consumer has evolved over the multiple decades that you've spent investing, right? What's happened over the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the last 5 years, and how has that driven change at VMG's strategy and approach, or has it driven change at all?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you look at the very beginning when we started kind of investing kind of out there, we were really dealing with a kind of a misfit of people who couldn't make it in big CPG. And they wanted to come up with an interesting idea. So think of 20 years ago, the Kind bars out there, the Perfect bars, Pirate's Booty, Pretzel Crisp, some of those brands that you might kind of know. Those are all started by really interesting people who really didn't kind of fit in the normal consumer kind of product world. What we've seen over the past kind of 10 or 20 years is kind of an emergence of a new type of entrepreneur that we work with. One that's really trying to understand what the needs are of the consumer, not just from a gut feel like they did 20 years ago, but from how the diets and everything else is changing out there. So I think two things have really kind of changed out there in the consumer space in two of our key areas. One is in the food space and the move just towards healthier kind of foods on that. And it's been a slow journey, and one of the key things as an investor is not to get too far ahead of where the consumer is out there. So if you look at kind of my career of investing in the beverage space out there, my first investment I did was in vitamin water, 75 calories per usage, not super healthy kind of out there. Over the past years, we've invested in Spindrift, which is that flavored water business there. Now that's 5 to 15. We've also invested in an energy business, which is kind of 0 to 5. And so what you'll see is that progression towards a healthier out there. The second big change I think we've seen in our kind of consumer space overall is the rise of the beauty brands out there. To me, the best retailer in America today is Sephora out there. I don't know if many of you all have been in a Sephora. It is unbelievable what they are kind of doing there. Remember during COVID, people were talking about the death of the retailer. Sephora has really kind of changed that. And what we've seen is the use of social media to really reach out to consumers out there in that beauty space. And we're seeing that adoption across all the different areas. But now there's so many more kind of beauty brands out there, and those beauty regimens that have been developed have created a really unique investment opportunity for us over the past 5 or 10 years.
I'm going to throw a tiny curveball in here. This is a question based off of something that we spoke about maybe 15 minutes ago. You just mentioned how every single consumer in this auditorium goes into a 7-Eleven or a gas station, and they're used to seeing X, and you think they're going to see Y. What's X? What's Y? Just give people kind of a sneak peek in where the world's going.
So, one of the things that's happened over the past 25 years or 30 years in the food space is we've really become a snacking culture kind of out there. Think about your own habits or the habits of your kids or grandkids kind of out there. I was thinking this the other day. I grew up in St. Louis, and my uncle was a minister in Corpus Christi, and we used to take car rides, down to go see him. And we would stop at a gas station, and I would just hope that there would be cheese crackers in there, because that would be the one snack you could get at a gas station, 40, 50 years ago out there. Nowadays, you walk into a gas station, and what do you have? You have a plethora of kind of opportunities there. But I do think one of the things that's going to change there is with the advent of some of this new medication that's coming out there, the GLP-1s, et cetera, out there. I think we're going to see a movement away from kind of empty calorie snacking that's been so prevalent here in the United States, and a move towards more nutrient-dense snacking. And so I think you'll see that within our portfolio over the past 5 or 10 years. And the brands that have really done very well for us have had that kind of that dense nutrient, capability. They're bringing more protein to the diet there. And I think it's a trend that we'll see continue.
Cool. Carle, over to you. One of the advantages of being a sector specialist, we talk about this all the time, is you spend every waking moment focused on your space. You on technology, Mike on consumer. Spend some time maybe addressing the audience. Not everyone here is a world-class consumer investor, does nothing but meet with consumer companies, read consumer research. What are you seeing as the most advantageous opportunity in the space? Maybe across technology and or consumer. If those are separate, let's talk about them. If they're the same, let's talk about it.
Yeah, we can start with one that's the same, and I'll do two others that are probably more particular for technology. But one of the trends that I'm sure a lot of people in this room are aware of is just the consolidation within consumer services. So think about high cash flow, things like car washes, med spas, roofing companies, and they're all of a sudden getting an influx of institutional capital to roll this up. Along with that influx of capital comes with a more sophisticated owner who is looking for technology to increase growth, efficiency, and what probably everybody in this room likes, EBITDA. And so what we're trying to really find is some really interesting vertical software companies that are tackling that by becoming the operating system for these verticals. That's translated into our investment in Boulevard, which is the OS for med spas, salons, and wellness studios. We first partnered with that team in 2020. It was about $3 million of ARR. They'll do over 50 million, or they did over 50 million of ARR last year, and we just kind of co-led an investment in that business. I mentioned car washes. That's another space that we've gotten involved with in a company called Rinsed, which similarly is building the OS for that. As more roll-ups are happening, how do they efficiently drive more retail customers to membership customers? And that business was about $5 million of ARR when we invested in 2013. They did over 20 million last year, and they're still growing at over 100%. And so it's kind of those tailwinds that our consumer team is seeing, and we're also participating in a med spa investment in OVME, but then the technology that they're going to use with all their four-wall concepts. One that's a little bit more particular to technology would be retail media. So I think everybody's probably aware of the degradation of the cookie and how iOS has changed the game around first-party and third-party data. What we're seeing that translate to is brands and retailers shifting ad dollars from Meta, Google, and TV really more towards owned assets by the retail close to point of purchase. And so that recently translated to an investment from us into a company called Zitcha, which is building a software platform to allow retailers to build these types of ad programs that are kind of mimicking what Amazon and an Instacart have built. I guess lastly, how can you talk about a technology panel without mentioning AI? We're not going to look at infrastructure AI. That's not our specialty. But as we said, where do we use our ecosystem to find application layers that are really interesting and are top of mind for the consumer ecosystem? That's usually within marketing. So think content creation. In particular, we're excited about video and how AI can really make that more efficient. Marketing efficiency in just terms of ad dollars and how to spend them, another big area. Lastly, customer support, engagement, and experience, and the automation that can happen with the advancements in AI. That's probably our most recent investment, which is a company called Oxia, which is really an AI-driven tool to optimize consumer journeys. So it really ingests all the data a brand or retailer gets and then is able to create personalized journeys for each consumer coming to that brand, whether it's on-site, on a mobile app, through SMS or email communications, but it really knows exactly who you are and what you're looking for and allows you to personalize that.
So, Carl, you're excited about the change in how cookies are impacting everyone. You're not allowed to steal the same answer, to be clear.
I thought he's investing in cookies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot more fun to invest in cookies than to try to analyze how they're helping me out on that.
So maybe in just 60 seconds, what do you see as the largest opportunity set in the consumer space today?
Oh, for myself?
Yeah.
What I think the largest? Well, I kind of look at our consumer companies right now, and the ones that get me really most excited today is some of the stuff that we're doing in beauty, kind of out there. So we are the largest investor in a business called Rare Beauty, which is the Selena Gomez brand. It's the number 2 brand in Sephora, kind of right now out there. And what I think is really interesting about that kind of brand out there is, one, how it was built. We used to have to build brands in the beauty space, and I can remember being in board meetings 15 or 20 years ago, And the marketing would come out and say, we would want to get on page 10 of Vogue in the September issue. And of course, I had no idea about that. If it was Sports Illustrated, I'd have a better idea of where we should be, but certainly not in Vogue. And today, in a company like that, which is worth a couple $2 billion today, we do no advertising out there. It's all kind of social media out there. And so what really gets me excited by is how we're able to build brands by utilizing these tools that Carle and his team are investing in to really help us scale these businesses very, very quickly.
Carle, question specifically for you. This will be wildly interesting for those in the audience, given how much technology is influencing all of our lives. What are you seeing as maybe the largest mistakes that other technology investors are making? What are people missing? What are they not seeing that VMG is that's really helping drive your outperformance?
So I can only really speak to our domain, which is within commerce infrastructure. But I think the biggest mistake we're continuing to see is overpriced assets, which is probably a big result in kind of overestimating TAM. And what I mean by that is I mentioned a number of...
Just to address total addressable market.
Total addressable market, sorry.
For those in the audience that may not know.
And I mentioned some vertical SaaS investments that we made, and it's an area we continue to be very excited about. However, there's an influx of generalist investors that are really coming in and applying more horizontal SaaS multiples to these vertical markets that are naturally more TAM constrained. And so you're seeing that become very overpriced. Another area is just kind of an underestimation on like what is the true willingness to pay. And I think that's where our ecosystem really provides us an advantage. We were evaluating this business recently that's kind of utilizes robotics and advancements in computer vision to kind of provide real-time insights on shelf intelligence.
Very simple stuff.
They were going after more retailers, thinking that they would continue to get these 7-figure contracts with grocery retailers, home good retailers, and they were winning some of those. But ultimately, the budget for data resides within large CPG, Pepsi, Coke, General Mills, et cetera, Unilever. And we really were going to bring some expertise to migrate a lot of the focus into that, but then needed to price appropriately what they had built today, which was really focused on the retailer, whose market was extremely constrained because of the budgets for data within those retailers, as we've talked to them, are getting slashed. Yeah. And so that kind of really informed us to lean out when a Goldman Sachs, for example, came in and priced it at a 30% premium to where we wanted to invest.
Yeah, we'll touch on this in a bit, but we have a saying at the firm, see the forest, not the trees. Feels like having both sides of your business really help you do that.
For sure.
Right? You take a much broader lens at the world itself, not just through one tiny little silo of all I do is technology, I never talk to anyone else. That's it. It's hard
exactly.
to be
if we don't
do
have information asymmetry, we shouldn't be doing the deal.
That's exactly right. So let's maybe shift gears a bit. We're going to talk about how VMG tactically and strategically helps the companies that they've already invested in grow. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you to define for the audience what the VMG toolbox is. Yeah. Talk about how involved you are at the portfolio company level. What are you doing to drive growth and success there? And then does that level of involvement change between maybe your team and the technology team? And multi-part question, so apologies here, but obviously a lot of consumer companies benefit from technology. Are there sides of the business that are talking to the other side, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So when we make an investment on the consumer fund, what we do is we always talk about having a kickoff meeting, a real time to kind of sit down, really share the diligence that we've done with the company and really think through what are the challenges ahead. Our ultimate goal is to sell it to a strategic buyer. We've done more of that than any other consumer fund over the past 20 years. And interestingly, we've never taken a company public because I'd rather get all the cash right up front when we sell than take it public and deal with it as a public entity on that matter. So during that kickoff meeting, there's really kind of two major areas that we really kind of focus on. One is how do we going to amplify the sales going forward, kind of out there. What has been their tools that they've been using successfully, and how could we augment those tools and that team to really amplify those kind of sales out there? And the second one is to really think about what that gross margin of the business is. One of the biggest things that's changed over my 25 years of investing is for when the strategics want to make an acquisition, is they used to have the hubris that they could fix everything. And that has been a disaster for them. So when we sold businesses 20 some odd years ago, I could sell them a business that was growing very quickly, but had low gross margins, low profitability. They would still pay a good price because they love the brand, but they thought they could fix the margins going forward. Today, that's required upon us to show them that we can kind of fix those margins kind of out there. So when we kick off there, what's been really exciting to me is how the tools of amplifying sales have changed. And I spoke a little bit about that with kind of Rare. But take a business that we had like right at the very beginning of VMG, kind of nearly 20 some odd years ago out there, which would have been Kind Bars, one of our early investments out there. We used to kind of have a field marketing team that would go out to races, that would be on street corners, that would go into the Whole Foods, HEBs, and hand out products out there and try to drive trial that way, and use those tools to do that. We'd help them build really diverse, big field marketing teams. That has changed, obviously. Today, we're working with them thinking about what are the TikTok creators that they need to have? What are the Instagram strategies they need to have in place? How can they reach influencers of their market? How can they reach those end consumers that way? And we'll sit down and work with them. From an operating standpoint, what we do is we share between the two funds an ecosystem team that really has a strong network of operators to deal with the challenges there. To date, we don't use operating partners per se like a lot of other funds do, because I think that skill set tends to get stale over time. And I want to identify who are the right individuals to help a particular company at a particular moment. And that's what our ecosystem does, working with our team. So working with the ecosystem team, we're really driving the operating margin improvements by getting the right people in place and building that, and then looking at the new marketing tools that are out there to really amplify the sales.
Now, Mike, when it comes to TikTok, you are the firm's expert, are you not?
Oh my gosh, my daughters-in-law and everybody's so scary when I start naming TikTok influencers around the Thanksgiving dinner table kind of out there. I have very little experience in that, but it is dramatic to see how quickly businesses can scale these days because of the use of some of these social media tools that they had before. We used to have 3-5 year kind of slow growth in businesses, which now can take 18 to 24 months to get to that same level.
Yeah. Spend some time talking about what you think the largest challenge in your business is today. Not necessarily problem, but what's the largest challenge you face, and how are you overcoming that at VMG?
So it's probably a little bit of a cop-out answer because it's probably what we also pitch to all of our portfolio companies, but it's focus and discipline. I think like any investment firm, you have a team of very ambitious, very hungry, and very competitive people. For us to win, we have to stay very disciplined within our domain. But the technology that is coming out is very disruptive in a lot of areas. And so for our team, we get very excited when we see a really hot business that has the potential to return a lot of money. And what is often difficult is sitting back and saying, is VMG truly the right institutional partner for this investment? Or should we let somebody else make a lot of money on that investment? Because can we really provide an unfair advantage to this business and develop our reputation and credibility by doing so, which will help us win the next few investments. How we've done to address this is kind of try to create different frameworks. And one that we use very early on is this Venn diagram framework that really has three things that we constantly ask is, one, how does our ecosystem provide an unfair advantage to this business? Two, what is VMG's knowledge of the end market and the end buyer? And then 3, what is our conviction in the founder? And is that based on a long-standing founder relationship? Is that based on founder product fit? It can take a variety of reasons, but at the stage we're investing, we're really backing founders. And so, we have to have a really strong conviction there.
Yeah. I want to take maybe 60 seconds and refresh a question, Mike, that you and I spoke about on our Third Thursday Themes episode a few months ago. I asked you to rate on a scale of 1 to 7. We use 1 to 7 here at CAS. How incredible the opportunity set is in your business. 1 being absolute lowest, 7 being absolute highest. Just very briefly, 1 to 7, Carl, 1 to 7, Mike.
You want to go first?
Please,
Yeah.
yes.
I think the opportunity set is 7 right now. I think we're still in the infancy for a lot of the consumer ecosystem. So when I say that word, I'm talking about retailers, I'm talking about brands, I'm talking about manufacturers and the logistics providers that support this whole system. Their technology adoption is accelerating, but is still very low. And you layer on top of that some of the advancements that, again, AI is helping accelerate. There's a ton of opportunity for efficiencies and for really strong ROI to justify paying these software prices.
Mike?
So I would say it's a 5 to 6. And the reason I would say it's not a 7 is because I think there are more bad brand investments opportunity out there than there's ever been before. And I think the investors who have a real operational focus out there are going to get the chance to partner with the best entrepreneurs and with the best ideas to make them win. But overall, from a context of an industry, I would make it from a 5 to 6 because so many variants can get built, as I mentioned earlier, so quickly, but they're not really long-term brands. They're really more fads. And I think you see a lot of capital chasing fads and not the long-term trends that will be successful.
So maybe to reframe that in terms that the audience can really understand and is relevant to them, find an expert that knows how to tell the difference between a fad and a diamond in the rough, partner with them, go make a lot of money.
Yeah, look, I think investing is part art and part science on the consumer side. The art is really pattern recognition, of seeing these brands over and over and what is successful. What do retailers want? What do consumers want? What can be worked with the contract manufacturers to make sure you can get the operating margins kind of in place? And the science then really comes through the details from the data that you can get through the sale-through work and through the consumer surveys. So you can get a real intricate insight into that. And when you can put those two together, I think you can really make some good decisions about where to lean into.
Mike, to kind of put a bow on all of this, 15 or so minutes ago, we spent some time talking about how the consumer has evolved over the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
Pull out your crystal ball for us. Where's the puck going in the next 20 years? How is the consumer going to change from here going forward? How is technology going to influence that change, given how much it's obviously impacting our daily lives? And what should consumer investors be mindful of, given all of this change?
So a caveat, I picked the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year, and so you might want to put your pencils down as we talk about predictions and projections kind of out there. I think a couple things. One is I think what are consumers there, but consumers are now picking individual brands and individual micro categories and really developing a persona for themselves. And I think that is one of the things that's really changed a lot over time and will continue to change. So what you might use for a certain beauty product, you might really trade up and really want to spend a lot of dollars on it. But for another kind of category that you're less interested, you might kind of trade down. And I think we're going to continue to see that trend. And so I think the winning investors are going to be the ones that are identifying what are those categories that people are willing to spend a lot for, that it's really meaningful and it's a real part of their persona. We spend a lot of time kind of at VMG kind of thinking about that. I think also that what we need to do at VMG is to make sure that we're constantly updating that toolbox of resources, how we're amplifying brands and how we are helping them become more profitable out there. I'll say the third prediction that I would have for you all is because of the tools that are creating, I think more people are going to get into the brand creation space over time out there. And I'll have a big bet that over the next 5 to 10 years, your kids or your grandkids are going to come to you and say, I got a great idea in the consumer area, and they're going to want to build a brand. And I think that's one of the great things that's happening out there is so many interesting people are coming into the brand space, so many people of different backgrounds because they have ideas and that they're now tools for them to come in to build those brands that were not there before.
Outstanding. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Carle and Mike.